So who are EuropaBio? We are an industry association that represents life sciences and biotechnology across all sectors and in all applications. And it's very exciting to see the opportunities and role that biotechnology can play across the spectrum as we look towards delivering the Green Deal. And I talk about joining the biorevolution because biotechnology has always been revolutionary for me since the beginning of my career. And it's wonderful to see what kind of role and value it can bring to the work that Europe has placed before it now. So next slide, please. So I'll give you a short oversight of what EuropaBio does. We work to support biotechnology being delivered into healthcare and also in the development of a sustainable planet. On the healthcare side, biotechnology has an incredibly valuable role to play across the whole spectrum of healthcare in maintaining health in the first place, in preventing illness, in diagnosing illnesses early and accurately, and in treating and managing diseases effectively and within sustained quality of life. When we move across to its role within a sustainable world, this is really where the biorevolution is coming, as far as I can see. I've seen a wonderful amount of energy and passion coming into scaling up how biotechnology can support the development of a sustainable planet. And now critical changes are needed to deliver the sustainability goals that we have. And biotechnology will underpin what I hope is the biggest change in use of resources since the agricultural revolution. And this is not the technology itself. Europe has demonstrated for decades that it is a wonderful producer of technologies. The technology is not the bottleneck, it's the framework in which the technologies are matured and delivered to their destination. And this is really where EuropaBio works. So as well as looking at technologies themselves, we also look at the often complex regulatory framework in which they must be delivered, both for the technologies that are core and also for the sectors in which those technologies will be applied. We work to help secure a comprehensive policy environment, because as we know, and many people in Europe know, there are many policies developed across many different sectors. And sometimes these can pull together and sometimes these can pull in opposite directions for a particular technology. So for biotechnology and in particular industrial biotechnology, we want to ensure that policies work together and are aligned for the really strong support for the development of industrial biotechnology. We also work to support market access, because if you can't bring a technology to your target stakeholders, then it cannot impact. And so that's incredibly important, particularly for Europe, which is very cautious, rightly so, about what technologies it uses and what products it brings onto the market. Huge part of our work is SME support and the innovation pathway as a whole. The COVID situation has taught us and demonstrated very well how early stage research needs to be translated strongly through small companies, into large companies and into consumer uptake, because this is how technologies mature. They don't fall from the sky overnight. They take decades to be funded and developed through a pipeline to maturity. And so it's incredibly important that we enable that as much as possible. And finally, we communicate and celebrate biotechnology and the actors within it as much as possible, because this is how we demonstrate the kind of human impact that is needed to bring technologies through to fruition. So next slide, please. This is just a tiny snapshot of the types of organisations that we work with within our membership. And it's extremely diverse because everybody has something to learn and so everybody has something to teach when it comes to delivering biotechnology to its destination. So our members vary in the industrial spectrum from the smallest, newest startups right through to large multinational organisations. And we are supported very strongly as well by our National Associations Council, which really helped found us 25 years ago. And so I'm delighted to come into a German meeting today, and the country has been a very strong supporter of EuropaBio's work for many, many years. Next slide, please. So this is really where we start to take a deep dive into the EU Green Deal and how this links into industrial biotech. You can see already on the screen that it's already a complex picture. If we start with the Green Deal in the centre, you can see this is an incredibly ambitious target, and those dates are moving closer every day. So we already have the ambition to reduce carbon dioxide emissions by 55% in 2030. That is not far away. So these are not aspirations. These are things we need to be implementing today. And the aim is to become carbon neutral by 2050. This is a really good, ambitious goal, and I'm incredibly happy that we have it. And I'm really happy that Europe is trying very hard to implement policies and structures that will help to deliver it. So you can see in the boxes in green in the centre where the Green Deal is really trying to impact. And you can see that it impacts everything that we do across all our major sectors and how we operate from day to day. So it addresses very much the production of sustainable energy. It talks about transport. It talks about industrial processes. It talks about major sectors such as construction, so that we can continue to grow and develop as humans in a sustainable manner. It's talking about farm to fork and the production of food, which is hugely important, both culturally all across Europe, economically, as it's a massive economic percentage of our economic activity, and also from an environmental perspective, because agriculture is a huge part of the inputs and outputs that we need to address when it comes to achieving Green Deal ambitions. Around it in blue are some of the strategies and legislations that are already being developed to try and implement the Green Deal. So we already see actions around climate law, which I think is really important to put into legislation requirements for sustainable changes rather than aspirations. We also have the industrial strategy, which is being developed and is being implemented as we speak. And I will come on to that in my next slide. We also have strategies such as the chemical strategy for sustainability. You've got the biodiversity strategy, which is very important because, as we know, you can't change one thing without changing everything else. And so it's incredibly important that we maintain biodiversity. And so COVID has really impacted what we do here. The Green Deal was ambitious because it had to be. And then when COVID came, it made the economic aspects of the Green Deal an absolute necessity for Europe. And this is what really brings us to the industrial strategy. So I'm going to spend a slide just looking at this, because there are three main pillars within the EU industrial strategy. And industrial biotechnology is absolutely key to at least two of those. So first of all, we have the green transition. And this is where, if we want to achieve climate neutrality, industrial biotechnology is going to impact everywhere here, both in the creation of sustainable industrial processes and the creation of sustainable products. And so these fit also very well into the circular economy strategy as well, because not only do we need to bring things into use and process that have been derived without use of fossil fuels and petrochemical sources, but they also need to be highly circular. So it's incredibly important that we play a role here. And this impacts all materials that we use in our lives from day to day. On the competitiveness front, industrial biotechnology is incredibly important here as well. In the next slide, we will see some of the facts and figures around industrial biotechnology. But here you can see it is already a very competitive economic. So we need to really build on this, because as well as delivering the Green Deal, we can do this by fueling the industrial recovery for Europe as well. And finally, the final pillar of the EU industrial strategy is around digital transition. It would be a bold statement for me to say that industrial biotechnology is going to impact this. However, the digital transition will really help industrial biotechnology to be applied into industrial process and product development more efficiently, so that we can run processes in real time, maintain high levels of productivity, very high quality output. So next slide, please. So I already referred to earlier the fact that biotechnology is a strong economic player, and it has been an economic player for a very long time. Primarily, it started off many decades ago around healthcare biotechnology, as we really saw the revolution that came after the Human Genome Project and the ability to start managing the way we develop medicines much more closely. So we've always seen a very high level of economic activity and employment and skills development around aspects of biotechnology. However, industrial biotechnology is really becoming a very major player within this as well. So biotechnology is not a charity. It's not something we do because we have to. It is a major economic contributor already within Europe. So I'll just quickly give a summary of some of the points within our work that we've done recently. We worked with the Whitehall Institute to develop an economic study called Measuring the Economic Footprint of the Biotechnology Industry in Europe, which was very recently published and looked back across a number of years, up to 2018, on the economic impact of biotechnology. So in 2018, you can see that European GDP benefited by up to 78 billion euros, direct contribution at 38.5 billion. Because when you look at biotechnology, you don't just look at core products and processes. There is a huge support sector involved in this. There are specialist aspects of the delivery of biotechnology products and processes that each are their own entire industry sector. So there is a huge employment impact from biotechnology, both directly and indirectly. So you can see the employment itself had over 900,000 people employed in 2018 linked to biotechnology activities. And this contributed 1.5% of Europe's total industrial gross value added. Industrial biotechnology within that is a job multiplier of 4.2. And this is the highest of any biotech sector. And this follows over into labour productivity for over 100,000 euros gross value added per employee. And this is much higher than economic performance as a whole. So you can see that biotechnology is a very high impact sector economically. Next slide, please. So this brings me to a very important slide here. We know that Europe has the technology capability to deliver both the Green Deal and a very competitive economic platform. But the question is, how are we going to do that, and are we going to achieve this? Will we drive innovation through to market as part of a very healthy, globally competitive European landscape? Or will we consume Green Deal and sustainable products elsewhere because we are running to catch up with the immense changes that we see happening worldwide now? So while we talk a very good talk on what we need to achieve, and I'm sure that we will achieve it, we need to be at the forefront of the competitive action there as well. And really, Europe led the drive for aiming towards very ambitious carbon neutral targets. And will it be competitive? And there are key things that we need to look at to ensure that Europe can be part of on the economic road to delivery. So first of all, we look at the innovation engine. Europe is really good at this. So we do have a very good continuous innovation pipeline. We need to always be investing in next generation science. We need to always be developing the skills base that we need that technologies change on a daily basis. And we achieve a lot of these things already. Europe doesn't lack for early stage innovation. It does lack to some extent for investment to develop early stage innovation. And this is where we do lag behind other major areas in the world, such as the US. The policy and regulatory framework is absolutely key to the maturation of these technologies through to market. Europe has, some people would say world leading, some people would say too hard. What we need to do is have a robust regulatory framework supported by policies across different sectors that enable industry to make long-term investment and planning, because it will happen if they know where they're going and that they can get there. So we don't want things to change too dramatically. We want to be able to make an investment today that we know that we can work on in 20 years' time. And this has to be enabling, and it has to be accessible. So when you think about a lot of innovations coming out of small companies, they need to know that they can afford to go into a regulatory process and that it's not going to take them 5 years to do this. So this is not just about large companies saying, we would like to get through to marketplace. This is about small companies being able to access the regulatory framework at all. And it's very important that Europe makes its regulatory and policy framework an enabling framework. I've mentioned earlier as well, market creation, and this is incredibly important as well. Again, markets don't spontaneously appear overnight. You can create them, and for sustainable products and processes that may not be as cheap or easily accessible as petrochemical driven existing products and processes, we need to help that happen. So through procurement, through level playing fields on a global level, and through helping to facilitate consumer demand. And finally, we need to do this Europe-wide. As we've already said, Europe has a lot of technologies which are really great. We need to bring society with us so that they are creating the market demand for these things. And we need to enable all regions within Europe to benefit economically and skills-wise and employment-wise, be part of this story. We go there together or we don't go there at all. So next slide, please. And when I say acting at European level, this is incredibly important at a global level as well. What we do in Europe, we are a leader of ambition and targets and standards for all the products and processes and the people that drive them. If we are not leading competitively from an industrial perspective, it's very hard for us to help support other regions of the world also do this in an ethical and sustainable way. If we become the consumer of products that are produced elsewhere without a core role in how they are produced, we know that they are not going to be produced at standards that we would like to see in Europe. So it's incredibly important from a moral imperative that Europe does become a world leader competitively, so it can bring the whole world with it. Next slide, please. So getting back to business, I'm going to wrap up my presentation with just a really short look at how we do this within EuropaBio. Many of you will know about our EFIB conference, which will take place, I am delighted to say, face-to-face in October this year in Vienna. So we really hope to see a lot of people there for a very well-earned reunion. And you can see the types of aspects that companies look at all the time. We're looking at circularity and sustainability. We're looking about how we create sustainable cities, how you create industrial biotech through bioprocesses and technologies. This is all the things that business looks at when it's looking at how it's going to make those long-term investments, particularly for the production side within Europe. Next slide, please. And my final message is that this year is our 25th anniversary. And this really, as we were looking at what we would do for our anniversary this year, it really brought home the message that biotechnology does not happen overnight. It takes many decades of investment in early stage technologies through small companies, medium and large companies to deliver the products and processes that you see today. And I think COVID is the best example of that. The vaccines that you see now have come to market with unprecedented speed, but the technology and the research behind that started decades ago. So while we have massively accelerated how we do this, we need to keep on making sure that we enable this right from the early stage technology. So we will spend the year celebrating and looking back at those breakthrough technologies that we've seen in the last 25 years. We will be delighted if you would want us to join us on that journey. So last slide, please. So I would just say thank you very much indeed. I'm really looking forward to the presentations we have today and tomorrow. You are going to see exactly how industrial biotechnology works. And I will be very interested to learn as well about how the AI in the digital transformation is going to enable us also. Thank you once again.